At the bottom of the folder was a letter, and Judith's blood ran cold as she read it. The subject has agreed to the marriage arrangement as predicted. Phase 1 is complete. Beginning Phase 2, emotional manipulation and dependence building. Estimated timeline for complete control, 3 to 6 months. Payment will be transferred upon successful completion of the project. Judith felt like she was going to throw up. This wasn't just about companionship, or even about pretending to be blind. Vinyl had been hired by someone to manipulate and control her, and she had no idea why. She quickly took photos of the documents with her phone, put everything back exactly where she'd found it, and crept out of the office. As she sat in her bedroom looking at the photos on her phone, Judith realized that her situation was much worse than she'd thought. She wasn't just married to a liar, she was married to someone who was being paid to manipulate her. But who was paying him? And what did they want from her? She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear Vinyl come home early from his meeting. She didn't realize he was in the house until she heard his voice right outside her bedroom door. "Judith," he called. "Are you feeling all right? Your breathing sounds irregular." Judith's heart nearly stopped. How could he possibly know how her breathing sounded from outside a closed door? "I'm fine," she called back, quickly hiding her phone. "Just taking a nap. Would you like some tea?" Vinyl asked. "You sound stressed." "No, thank you," Judith said, trying to keep her voice normal. She heard his footsteps move away from her door, but she had the distinct feeling that he knew something was wrong. What if the person you're forced to marry can read your mind, but you don't know it yet? This is exactly what happened to Judith when her world turned upside down in the most unexpected way. Judith thought she had her life figured out. She was 23, working at her father's company, and dreaming of finding true love someday. But sometimes life has other plans. Sometimes the person who seems like your worst nightmare might actually be your saving grace. This is the story of how an arranged marriage between two strangers became something neither of them saw coming. Judith's father sat across from her at the kitchen table, his hands shaking as he held the stack of papers. The morning light streaming through the windows made the debt notices look even more threatening than they already were. His construction company, the one he built from nothing over 25 years, was drowning in debt. "Judith, sweetheart," her father said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully." She looked up from her coffee, immediately sensing the gravity in his tone. Her father had always been a strong man, someone who could handle any crisis. But today he looked defeated. "The company is bankrupt," he continued. "We're going to lose everything. The house, the business, everything your mother and I worked for." Judith felt her stomach drop. "Dad, there has to be something we can do. We can get a loan, or maybe sell some assets, or—" "I've tried everything," he interrupted. "But there is one option, one way to save the company and keep our family from losing everything." The way he said it made Judith's skin crawl. She knew whatever was coming next would change her life forever. "There's a man named Vinyl Morrison. He's wealthy, very wealthy. His family owns several successful businesses. He's offered to help us, but—" Her father paused, unable to meet her eyes. "But what, Dad?" "He wants to marry you, Judith. An arranged marriage. It's the only way he'll agree to save the company." The words hit her like a physical blow. Marriage? To a complete stranger? She'd heard of Vinyl Morrison, of course. Everyone in their small town had. He was the mysterious heir to the Morrison fortune, but she'd never actually seen him. Rumors said he was reclusive, possibly disabled, and definitely not someone a young woman would want to marry. "Dad, you can't be serious," Judith said, standing up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. "This is crazy. I'm not going to marry some random guy just to save your business." Her father's eyes filled with tears. "Judith, please. I know how this sounds, but we don't have any other choice. If we don't do this, we'll lose everything. Your mother's medical bills from last year, the mortgage on this house, the business loans, it's all going to come crashing down." "There has to be another way," Judith insisted, pacing around the kitchen. "What about bankruptcy? What about selling the business? I've looked into all of that. The debts are too big, and the business isn't worth enough to cover them. This marriage arrangement, it's not forever, Judith. Vinyl has agreed that if after 2 years you're both unhappy, you can divorce. But right now it's our only option." Judith felt trapped. She loved her father, and she knew he wouldn't ask this of her unless he was truly desperate. But the thought of marrying a stranger, of giving up her freedom and her dreams of finding real love, made her feel sick. "What do you know about him?" she asked quietly. "He's 28, never been married. He's blind, Judith. Has been since he was a child. He's intelligent, well-educated, and from what I understand, he's looking for companionship more than anything else." The fact that he was blind made Judith feel slightly better, though she immediately felt guilty for thinking that way. At least he wouldn't be expecting a normal marriage, she thought. Maybe they could just be roommates or something. "When would this happen?" she asked, already knowing she was going to agree. She couldn't let her family lose everything because of her selfishness. "The wedding is in 2 weeks," her father said. "Vinyl wants to meet you tomorrow. Just a quick introduction at his house." 2 weeks. Judith's entire life was going to change in 2 weeks. She thought about her job, her friends, her tiny apartment that she loved so much. All of it would be gone, replaced by a life with a man she'd never met. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll do it, but I want to meet him first, and I want to set some ground rules." Her father's relief was visible. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need." That night, Judith lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She kept thinking about what her life would be like married to Vinyl Morrison. Would they live in the same house? Would he expect her to act like a real wife? The thought made her shudder. She'd always imagined her wedding day would be magical. She dreamed of marrying someone who loved her, someone who made her laugh and feel beautiful. Instead, she was going to marry a blind stranger to save her father's company. The next morning came too quickly. Judith dressed carefully, choosing a simple blue dress that wasn't too formal but still looked respectful. She didn't want to give Vinyl the wrong impression about what kind of marriage this would be. The Morrison estate was even more impressive than she'd expected. The house was massive, with perfectly manicured gardens and a long driveway lined with expensive cars. Judith's father squeezed her hand as they walked up to the front door. "Remember, sweetheart, you don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with," he whispered. A butler answered the door and led them through hallways filled with expensive artwork and antique furniture. Everything about the house screamed money, which only made Judith more nervous about what she was getting herself into. They were shown into a large sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the gardens. Judith was admiring the view when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around and froze. The man walking into the room was nothing like what she had expected. Vinyl Morrison was tall, probably around 6 feet, with dark hair that was perfectly styled and strong, defined features. He was wearing an expensive-looking suit that fit him perfectly, and he moved with confidence despite supposedly being blind. But what struck Judith most was how handsome he was. This was not the image she'd had in her mind at all. "Mr. Morrison," her father said, standing up quickly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Vinyl smiled, but Judith noticed that his eyes didn't quite focus on her father when he spoke. "Please, call me Vinyl. And you must be Judith." He turned toward her, and even though she knew he couldn't see her, something about his gaze made her feel like he was looking right through her. It was unsettling. "Yes," she managed to say. "Nice to meet you." "The pleasure is mine," Vinyl said, and his voice was smoother than she'd expected. "Please, both of you sit down. I thought we could talk about the arrangement and get to know each other a little better." As they sat down, Judith found herself studying Vinyl more carefully. He moved around the furniture with ease, never bumping into anything or seeming lost. His blindness was clearly something he'd adapted to well over the years. "I want to be completely honest with both of you," Vinyl said, settling into a chair across from them. "I know this situation is unusual, and I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable or pressured. Judith, I understand that this marriage is primarily to help your family's financial situation, and I respect that." Judith was surprised by his directness. She'd expected him to be more awkward or desperate, but he seemed completely in control of the situation. "I appreciate your honesty," she said carefully. "I have to ask, though, why do you want to get married? I mean, why this arrangement?" Vinyl was quiet for a moment, and Judith wondered if she'd offended him. But when he spoke, his voice was calm and thoughtful. "I've been blind since I was 7 years old," he said. "Car accident. Growing up like that, And especially growing up wealthy, you learn pretty quickly that most people either pity you or want something from you. It's been difficult to form genuine relationships, especially romantic ones. Judith felt a pang of sympathy for him, though she tried not to let it show on her face. "I'm not looking for pity," Vinyl continued, as if he could sense her thoughts, which made her uncomfortable. "I just want companionship. Someone who's honest about why they're with me, rather than someone pretending to love me for who I am when they really just want my money." "That's very practical," Judith said, not sure how else to respond. "I think practical is good," Vinyl replied. "I'd like to propose that we try this arrangement for 2 years, as your father and I discussed. We'll live in the same house, but you'll have your own space. I won't expect anything from you that you're not comfortable with. Think of it as roommates who happen to be married." This actually sounded better than Judith had hoped. She'd been terrified that he would expect her to act like a real wife, but it seemed like he just wanted someone around. "What about after 2 years?" she asked. "If either of us wants out, we divorce. No questions asked, no hard feelings. Your father's debts will be taken care of regardless." Judith looked at her father, who was watching the conversation with obvious relief. This arrangement would save everything he'd worked for, and it didn't sound like it would be too terrible for her. "I have some conditions," Judith said, surprising herself with her boldness. Vinyl raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening. I want to keep working. I don't want to just sit around the house all day. And I want to be able to see my friends and family whenever I want." "Of course," Vinyl said immediately. "I wouldn't expect you to give up your life just because we're married. In fact, I'd prefer it if you stayed busy and happy. And I want my own bedroom," Judith added quickly. "Already arranged," Vinyl said with a slight smile. "The master suite has 2 bedrooms with a shared sitting area. You'll have complete privacy." Judith was running out of objections. Everything he was saying sounded reasonable, almost too reasonable. There had to be a catch somewhere. "Why are you being so accommodating?" she asked suspiciously. Vinyl's smile grew wider. "Because I want this to work, Judith. I want us both to be comfortable with this arrangement. If you're miserable, then I'll be miserable too." Something about the way he said it made Judith feel like there was more to it than that, but she couldn't put her finger on what. "Okay," she said finally. "I agree to the arrangement." Her father let out a visible sigh of relief, and Vinyl nodded approvingly. "Wonderful," Vinyl said. "The wedding will be small, just immediate family and a few close friends. I hope that's acceptable to you." "That's fine," Judith said, though the reality of actually getting married was starting to hit her. In less than 2 weeks, she would be Mrs. Morrison. After they worked out a few more details, Judith and her father prepared to leave. As they were walking toward the door, Vinyl called out to her. "Judith, would you mind staying for just a few more minutes? I'd like to show you the rooms you'll be using." Judith looked at her father, who nodded encouragingly. "I'll wait in the car, sweetheart." Vinyl led her upstairs to a beautiful suite of rooms on the 2nd floor. The bedroom was larger than her entire apartment, with a huge 4-poster bed and windows that looked out over the gardens. There was also a sitting room with a cozy fireplace and a massive bathroom with a clawfoot tub. "This is beautiful," Judith said, genuinely impressed. "I'm glad you like it," Vinyl said. "I want you to feel at home here." As they stood there in the sitting room, Judith found herself studying Vinyl again. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a striking blue color, but they had a slightly unfocused quality that confirmed his blindness. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her somehow. "Can I ask you something?" she said impulsively. "Of course. Do you ever wish you could see? I mean, do you miss it?" Vinyl was quiet for a long moment, and Judith worried that she'd crossed a line. But when he answered, his voice was thoughtful rather than offended. "Sometimes," he said, "I miss seeing faces, especially when I'm trying to get to know someone. I have to rely on voices and other cues to understand people, which can be challenging." "I'm sorry," Judith said. "I didn't mean to pry." "You're not prying," Vinyl assured her. "We're going to be married, Judith. I want us to be able to talk openly with each other." As he said this, he stepped closer to her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. It was subtle and expensive, and for some reason it made her heart rate pick up slightly. "I should go," she said quickly. "My father's waiting." "Of course," Vinyl said, stepping back. I'll see you at the wedding.